Welcome back to Inside the Lines. Happy Wednesday. A lot to go over today. Some trades of the NFL we get to talk about. Possibly our last World Series game. We'll get John on that. And plenty of time for Q&A today. Not too much line movement going on this week, so definitely a lot of opportunity to ask questions. So please keep them going in the chat. Let's bring in Steven here. Let's talk about Chase Young going to the Niners. Now, this Niners defense last season was quite impressive. Not the same this season, especially the last 3 games. So for a non-quarterback, the movement he's making for this team is actually pretty significant.
Yeah. So last season, they're actually, even despite Nick Bosa being a tear with 18.5 sacks, they were only 11th last year. So they weren't elite in that area. And then this year, they're 19th in total sacks, and that's included with 8 teams above them who've only played 7 games versus their 8. So they're bottom third in terms of average per game. So this Chase Young addition, now they were teammates at Ohio State, but they never really played together. Chase Young was a sophomore, just emerging, and Nick Bosa got hurt. So we don't really have a comp, but it stands to believe that we're projecting them to finish, the rest of the season in the top 8. And that should go a long way to helping them. Hopefully, I wish they had done this deal a week ago before they played the Bengals, because for my Ravens' sake. But, we do think that the impact here goes some 25% increase roughly in Super Bowl percentage. And, the 14%, that's more in line with the plus 525 odds that they have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, again, for a non-quarterback, that's pretty significant movement, especially for half the season being gone already. Jake still thinks that his Jags will be beating the Niners, which is a really interesting take. But with that, that's really all the significant movement that we saw in the NFL trade. So Chase Young certainly going to make an impact. Let's move over to John. We're going to talk a little bit about some World Series here. All right, John, this could be the end. Do you think this is the end today?
I unfortunately think it's going to be the end. I just don't see the Diamondbacks fighting back. I mean, they did against the Phillies. It was 3-2 though, and they were going to Philly, but this one's a little different. It's 3-1. They have one more game at home. The Rangers have been hitting, and the Phillies weren't hitting last series, the last couple games. So I think it's going to be over.
Yeah, I know you like that play. Let's move to some player props that you like as well tonight, which you've been pretty good with through this whole postseason.
Yeah, so the Rangers on the money line was the first play, and I mean Nathan Eovaldi's been unbelievable this season, this postseason as well. He struggled his first playoff start against the Diamondbacks, but he's been pitching a lot better, or he should pitch a lot better tonight, in my opinion. Zach Gallen, on the other hand, he's really struggled all postseason. His only couple good starts, he had a ton of base runners on, and I think he's going to struggle again. I'd be aware for the Diamondbacks to pitch both Kevin Ginkel and Paul Sewald tonight, even if they're losing, and they could go multiple innings as well. We'll go on to the player props. Zach Gallen under 4.5 strikeouts. He's only hit this over strikeout prop once in the postseason, and that was in his last game, but he barely hit it, and he walked 4 batters in that outing as well. He only struck out 1 batter against the Phillies the second time he faced them in that series. I think we're going to see something similar with the Rangers today. They've seen his stuff. They can adjust, and I don't think they're going to strike out much. Zach Gallen under 15.5 outs. I mean, same idea there. If he runs into any trouble in a 3-1 series and in an elimination game, the D-backs will go to their bullpen immediately, especially because, like I said, Paul Sewald and Kevin Ginkel could each go multiple innings, so they really don't have to force Gallen, to go through as many innings as possible. And he's only hit that over twice in the postseason. Leody Taveras under 0.5 total bases. He's 0 for his last 15 now, or 0 for his last 17, I want to say, and 1 for his last 28. So we're getting unbelievable value at plus 175 there. He doesn't have great numbers against Zach Gallen either, so I would love to take that chance. Ketel Marte, he has a hit in every game this postseason. He's hit this hit run RBI prop in pretty much every game as well. So that's a pretty easy go-to. And then Geraldo Perdomo over 0.5 total bases. He has a hit in 8 straight games now. So once again, he's hot. I believe he's 11 for his last 26 now. So we're going to keep riding him again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that. There a lot of questions in the chat for you also, John. So I'm going to let you get to that. This could be the end of World Series, John, of baseball, John, tonight, possibly. Any words you want to say?
I'm ready to hibernate.
NHL John is coming. He's in the preview right now. So we'll let him warm up for that. Before we get to some NBA, I want to talk to Jake quick. Now, yesterday in the MACTION, we had a lot of ugly games, a lot of bad weather. But so we had all these rushing props, 2 for 3 on those. We have another rushing prop you like tonight, again with some cold weather.
Yeah, if you were watching that Central Michigan game, there's a point in the second quarter where you could barely see anything. It was snowing that hard. And we were right talking about this cold weather. These guys are running the ball like crazy. And we like another rushing prop tonight. Former Gator Lorenzo Lingard, over 50.5 rush yards. We have him for 84 rush yards. Kent State's defense gives up 5 yards per carry on the road. Akron's, their running game's not that great, but with this cold weather, they're going to run the ball a lot. He only averages around 10 carries per game, but we have him between 18 and 20 carries because we think they're going to keep the ball on the ground. So we really like him to hit this over, and I think he could do this early in the game.
Right. Moose behind you really going crazy over there.
The Moose is really going really crazy. He's very excited
about action. But yeah, this game, it's really hard to predict because these are two terrible offenses combined to average 23 points per game, and they allow 67 points per game. So terrible offenses, terrible defenses, which honestly makes it pretty hard to figure out how to approach that. So interesting situation there, but this is the best play we have for tonight. All right, let's move on. We're going to go to the NBA with Steven here. Not too much value again, but we'll definitely talk about all the games, answer some questions here. Let's start with a model pick that we do like, though, with Memphis at Utah. We like the over.
Yeah, this is one of those rare occasions where, so hopefully you can hear me. The line has been dipping just literally a minute ago. You could get 223.5, and now according to OddsJam, the lowest line is 225.
Wow.
Can you hear me? All right. Mm-hmm. Sorry. All right. Am I on?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, we still like the over because Memphis, the steam is going the opposite way, which is rare. Memphis' defensive 3-point percentage up significantly in the first 4 games this year at 41% allowed versus 35% last season. So some of the changes, some of the losses they've had on that in the perimeter seems to be impacting their defensive field goal percentage. Utah averaged 118 points game at home last season, and 117 in their 2 home games this year. So they're usually a pretty high scoring team and connect much better from 3. Again, the line's been bouncing around, so I think you could still get 223.5 or 224 if you wait.
Mm-hmm. Here's a question here about Jokic over 1.5 3-point field goals made. We can go over to the model and see if we have anything on that.
Yeah. 1.5 3. Now we have it at 1.26. So it depends on so we wouldn't predict the over in this game.
Okay. Good to know. Let's move to another question here, talking about Jaren Jackson Jr. over 2.5 blocks at plus 135.
We do have him for 2.8 blocks. I know there are some issues, some concerns that last year he was getting credited with blocks by the home team's scorekeeper. So he's not going to be at home, so maybe that'll hurt him. But I think that was proven that wasn't the case, that he was getting legitimate blocks, but it was something to keep an eye on.
Mm-hmm. Let's move to some of our leans that we have, some situations we can talk about with the OddsJam's lines, but something we did like was the Portland-Detroit over. Not enough value necessarily to call it a hardcore pick, but definitely something we lean towards.
Yeah, Portland, Detroit. So the line is available at as low as 215.5 according to OddsJam. I bet MGM in this case, and then you see some other lines at 217. So shop around, but it seems like the steam is coming down. It opened at 214.5 on the consensus, went up to 216 on the consensus. So maybe it's going back to the original 214.5. We set the line at 220. And it's because Detroit last year, they gave up. They played very high scoring games, 230 points. Portland last year, 230-point games overall. And then Detroit, their totals were 229.
Mhm.
So the odds makers are reflecting the current season, which after 4 games, their per game total is much lower. And so our model heavily weights the current season, the current players, and their individual efficiency and everything like that more than past seasons, obviously. But when you have an 82 game sample size from last year and a 4-game sample this size, all the weighting in the world is still going to skew more towards the number from last season, which was significantly higher scoring.
Yeah, I saw some questions about the Knicks money line in the chat. We don't have some necessarily value on the money line. A slight lean to the over, though. Maybe that's a better value play to look into.
I mean, this is starting last year. NBA started doing these back-to-back games and on opposing home courts. So Cleveland and New York just played, and it was a very low-scoring game dominated by the Knicks. And I remember tracking this carefully last year. I didn't, unfortunately, code anything permanently. But anecdotally, it definitely seemed like the second game of these back-to-back matchups would often zigzag versus the first one. So again, that's not exactly the most scientific thing I've ever done, but given and you see a lot in the NBA playoffs, this kind of zigzag situation where the team that got killed the first game in a low-scoring game tends to do much better the next night on a high-scoring thing. So there's a motivation there. The problem with Cleveland, obviously, is they still are without 2 of their 3 best players. And but I think that playing back-to-back and having, that it could lend itself to a higher scoring game than the odds makers are setting based on last night's very low total.
A couple of questions in the chat. We can go over to Rebecca's question. Red Velvet for the Spurs, Sacramento Kings, sorry, over 12.5 points. There could be some value there.
Let's see, over 12.5 for
Kevin
Herter.
Yeah.
Okay. So, side note: Kevin Herter went to college with my nephew, and my nephew didn't say the nicest things about Kevin Herter. But what's the line on him?
It's 12.5.
We have him at right under 12 at 11.7. See, Golden State has been playing well this season, obviously, and last year they were very good defensively at home, right? They allowed 112, but more importantly, they allowed 33% shooting on their home court, which is, they were horrible on the road. And then, it's obviously a big matchup for a rematch from the playoffs last year. And so far this year, it's only been 1 game, but they did allow 33%, just like they did last season at home. Without De'Aaron Fox in the lineup for Sacramento, while that could leave a lot more opportunities for Herter, could also, limit how many wide open looks he gets. Against Golden State last season in the playoffs, he has 1 for 6, 3 for 8, 1 for 4, 0 for 1, 1 for 6. A lot of bricklaying, 0 for 5, 2 for 9. So, it looks like he shot under 30% in those playoff games.
Hopefully he bounces back from that. Let's take one more question here, talking about Jason Tatum. Averaged 35 a game in his last 3 games versus Indiana. His prop line right now, 25.5.
Depending on what the juice is, we do have over at 26.6 in the projection. Let me just do a quick analysis of his prop. 25.5 is the line. Let's see. So obviously, okay. Well, I should really update this. It's only 2-1, so that's not very useful. Indiana, the line here is pretty high total. It's one of the higher totals on the board. It's gone up from 231.5 to 234.5. So even though our model has it more in line with the opening line of 229, I would take that as a positive sign that, that the fact that the model leans over despite having the game coming under, is actually kind of reinforces my personal confidence that he'd go over. We have Boston projected for 120.8 versus the team total of 123. So I love it. I like it when, it's one thing. I feel actually less confident if we had Boston way up, over the team total, and then that was what's driving this. So we think that Tatum, just on his, even if Boston comes up short of their team total, can still go over that number.
Mm-hmm. All right. Yeah. Good stuff there. Again, as the season goes on, as maybe the World Series and the MLB season ends tonight, we'll have plenty more player props and take a deeper dive into the NBA. So excited for that to come. Tomorrow, we'll talk more about college football. We'll probably have some more value plays, a Thursday night preview where you can find some value there. So we'll see you tomorrow at 1 o'clock, and good luck with your bets tonight.